842 at K-Fire. It's Guns in the 701. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Hey, fantastic. There's a little light snow. Now all we need is another, let me see here, 66 inches of snow, 67, and we'll match last year.
Well, there's always a weekend. There's always the weekend.
I don't think we're going to do that. What went wrong with the ATF in Little Rock? That's a terrible story.
Oh, we covered that here, last couple of weeks on most of our shows, but the Attorney General, he's having a problem with it, and I'm glad to see that. He's also one of the Attorney Generals that have signed on with the other 19 or 20, including North and South Dakotas, that is asking questions about the new rule that came out as far as defining dealer. But he wants some answers. He thinks it was probably and I agree with him, it's a box SWAT team raid that killed the Little Rock airport executive, Brian Malonsky, at his home, and it was a no-knock raid is what it was. It was a no-knock raid, which they call a no-knock warrant, and they went in there and basically were accusing him of being an FFL dealer under this new guideline. And, in his statement, the Attorney General, Tim Griffin, said, as someone who couldn't be a bigger law enforcement supporter, when the government acts in a particular way that raises questions, we have an obligation to say something. He says, my understanding, having looked at all of the ATF rules, is that they generally require a body cam when there is a pre-planned raid. He goes, why? Well, it's because information from cameras helps fill the vacuum of conspiracy and all the other things that go along with that. So record it. Got a body cam, go ahead and record it. That's required, and then there's a policy that it shall be released as soon as possible. Well, as of right now, it hasn't been released. Imagine that. ATF has rules for thee and not for thou, and that seems to be their status quo in so many things, unfortunately.
Like so much in federal government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not just the ATF. So, Mike, you want to jump in on that, or?
Well, no, that goes right to tell you that, the guy can't even defend himself now because they killed him. So, and they don't have body cam. They suddenly lost the body cam before they went in. They killed the guy who was defending his home from an invasion at 6 o'clock in the morning. He didn't know what was going on, so he was defending his family, and then now he can't even defend himself on that because, well, he's not here with us anymore.
Right. They went in on a no-knock raid. They didn't identify themselves probably until the last minute. Well, you, me, or anybody else, especially where we live, I hear something like that happen in my home, I'm probably going to do the same thing. The guy had no clue who he was firing on. And they went ahead and shot him. Not just they shot him in the head. If you look at the report now, and I know that's probably one of the things that the Attorney General is a little bit concerned with some other things that I was looking at. I do know that the state is actually investigating this as well, which I'm glad to see. And they said once that their Arkansas State Police Investigation Division is done with their investigation, then they will determine whether the state prosecutors, but not federal, state ones, will determine whether the ATF agent should face criminal charges. And maybe he should. Get all the facts and see what happens. But I'm glad to see that we got an Attorney General who he served in Congress. He sponsored lots of pro-gun legislation. He was endorsed, it says, by pro-gun groups. I know one of them was the National Rifle Association. And the guy has a stellar record. I mean, he was a judge advocate in the General Court. He's a colonel in the Army Reserve, lieutenant governor. I mean, the guy, he's a solid guy. And he's concerned, as he should be, as the Attorney General of his state. So I tip my hat to him. He's doing the right thing here, trying to get the story.
Help me out a little bit. Why the head? I mean, wouldn't you go for a leg, or if you're really that afraid of the guy, the shoulder, so at least, he's kind of incapacitated as far as getting a good aim on a gun back at you? Or what's going on?
Witnesses, right? No witnesses. You don't have to worry. You can do the story any way you want when there's no witnesses.
Well, and all the things I've ever taken in self-defense classes, especially with deadly force, they actually teach you that you should either try to use some kind of a non-lethal solution, which, by the way, the ATF does possess, but they chose not to use it. But your intent is not to necessarily kill, it's to stop the threat. That's without killing. They actually teach you that in any kind of self-defense course, but even with a firearm. So evidently the ATF has a little different policy. I guess they don't want any witnesses, like Mike said, and I guess it's pretty hard to have a different story if your witness is dead. It just don't seem right. I don't get it either, Todd.
Yeah, you can't just bury your head in the sand on this stuff. Guns in the 701 here on K-Fire at 847. New Biden background check rule hides dangers to freedom. Well, I guess that shouldn't be a surprise coming out of those people. Disappointment, but not a surprise.
You got that one, Clay? Or
I don't all speak at once. Mike. Just one at a time here.
Let Mike do that one.
I wasn't prepared for that one, to tell you the honest truth. I'll be honest with you on that one.
Well, I can go over it a little bit if you don't want to take it. The AP, which is Associated Press, they might as well call them the Biden media outlet sources, most of the mainstream stuff, because that's what they are. And they use the code words in their piece because they had to do this piece on the new Biden rule, and it's a puff piece, just like the headline says. They started out that it's the administration's latest effort to combat the scourge of gun violence across the country. Wow, doesn't that sound great? Going to go after all this? But as we all know, Biden's faltering in the polls across the board in just about every single demographic. He's trying to actually shore up his base, which is actually crumbling as well. And one of Biden's main points was to close the gun show loophole. Well, he's been very unsuccessful at getting that done congressionally, like you should, run it through the channels with checks and balances, across the three branches of government. So he turns to his ATF. He has Merrick Garland go ahead and make the ruling and the final rule on it, publish it in the register so that in 30 days it will be treated as law. And that's how they do it. When they can't win, they change the rules. And they go after regulatory changes rather than law changes, which can be challenged by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. But you got places like the Associated Press that pump this stuff up, make it sound great. I imagine if you're feeding yourself that kind of news source 24/7, you probably agree with it somewhat because you don't even know what's being said. And they did. They made it sound like a great thing that it's going to go after all these unregistered dealers. Let me give you some stats. John Lott, and I like John Lott. So this is from 2019, the stats. 287,400 prisoners had possessed a firearm during their offense. More than half, 56%, had either stolen it, which was 6%, or 6% also found it at the scene of a crime, 7% obtained it off of a street or from an underground market, and 43%, most of the remainder, had obtained it from a family member or friend or as a gift. 7% actually only 7% actually purchased it from under their own name from a licensed dealer. 7%. So we're going after minimal numbers. And then the ATF's own numbers show that 3.2% of the ATF interstate trafficking cases involve trafficking firearms at gun shows, flea markets, and auctions. So you're looking at really small percentages, not the majority of people. And, of course, they say it's not going to affect the dealers. Well, of course it's not going to affect the existing dealers. This is an effort to stop private sales, plain and simple. And you got and big media outlets backing it up.
And ATF Director Steve Dettelbach, the guy who says, I can't define an assault weapon, but I want to ban them in fame, said with a straight face that this final rule does not infringe upon anyone's Second Amendment rights and will not negatively impact many law-abiding licensed firearm dealers. Now, many, obviously, is the word there. They already play by the rules. It's just one more thing, where they're trying to change it in the media. They got their own media outlets to push this narrative that basically they're a mouthpiece for the ATF. So it's just ridiculous.
Comes with the 701 here on K-Fire 550. It's 852. So Maine's got some prohibitionists that are getting a little uptight, huh?
Well, one of the situations with that is that Maine's Game Fish and Parks sent out a thing where they were having a gun safety class, and they were going to have a how to properly clean your weapons as well. And part of those list of the weapons they were talking about were the AR-15, and of course you can guess that people started writing in nasty letters left and right talking about the weapons of war. You can't believe that you're cleaning or, you're doing this and doing that with the weapons of war type things. And it was all the basic talking points of the left right there, going on and on and on. But it reminds me a lot of, people got these that are on the Game Fish and Parks newsletter, got this, and they just were incensed. But they didn't bother to mention that the number of letters that came in that were so small of course, that small majority got their voice heard, and then they canceled the class. So it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Person's name wasn't Karen by chance, was it?
I'm sure there was a Karen in there. I mean, that's usually the thing. And then it always reminds me of, when you have a gun range that's up, set up somewhere for 50 years, and then some couple from California moves in next door to it, and suddenly they have a problem with it. That's that type of thing. It's like it's there. We're basically talking about cleaning your weapons. We're not talking about training or anything else. We're talking about how to properly clean your weapons. And of course they just don't want anything, so they're looking for any excuse to shut down anything where a government agency, which is the Game Fish and Parks, was doing something actually good with training, or I should say teaching people how to properly clean their guns. And it's just ridiculous.
Well, when I was going through some of these public comments, I dug a little farther from what the article had, and most of there weren't that many. Actually, there were more pro ones, but they didn't bother to talk about that. It was the same old crap. You can't use an AR-15 to go hunting. And people, I saw this email, and I was just disturbed to see that after the recent shootings in Lewiston. I mean, it was all rhetoric. It was all touchy-feely, hurt my emotions crap, had nothing to do with reality. And, yes, ARs, by the way, for those of you who don't know, they're a great hunting firearm. I use one. Jamie uses one. I don't know if you've ever used one, Mike, but they are just a semi-automatic.
A lot of varmints, coyotes, everything like that. I mean, the 223 is a 223, and it works well.
You want to make a list of stuff that could be deadly that you better outlaw? Let's put karate on there. You can't, because you can kill somebody if you do it right.
Yeah.
At least that's what Mr. Miyagi taught me anyway. Guys of the 701, real quick, you wanted to mention something else that you sent along a little bit late here, and now I can't find it. I had it right here.
Yeah, so kind of got a big announcement for the next couple of days here on Guns in the 701. So tomorrow night, Saturday, 8 p.m. Central Time, it's going to be the candidate Alex Balez. He's going to be joining Jamie and I to talk about Second Amendment issues primarily. We just want to get his take. We're not endorsing any one candidate here. It's just he said he'd come on. We're going to reach out to the rest of them as well, see if they'll join us over the course of time before the primary. But we feel it's an important issue, and I hope that everybody will tune in tomorrow to Guns in the 701 at 8 o'clock Central, 7 Mountain, to get his take. And I'm going to ask him a real question. This isn't a puff piece on this end. I'm not very politically correct. Go figure.
Clay's not known for his puff piece.
Yeah, I was going to say, nobody's ever accused him of being one of those politically correct kind of guys. So fantastic.
Definitely, we'll be very, we'll be polite. We'll have a good discussion. I just think it needs to happen. And then Wednesday, join us on our live show. David Sherwood, he had his guns removed because of a divorce protection order. Ben Koppelman's going to be joining us, along with the guys from Here's the Deal, Shiloh, and Marvin Lepp, and we're going to have a great discussion on Wednesday night about gun laws in the state of North Dakota and how they affect people going through divorce.
Best podcast on iHeart, by the way, Guns in the 701, so make sure you check that out, too.
Absolutely.
Right, guys,
wouldn't be any other place.
Hey, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on next Friday if I don't talk to you before.
Sounds good, Todd. Appreciate it.
All righty. Take care. It is 8:50.